Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, and welcome to the Humans Plus Agents podcast. I'm Jackie Schwabe, your co-host with Steve Cunningham and from the AI ROI Association. And we are super excited today to talk about some real world agent building that we've been doing over the week. So, hi Steve, how's it going?
Good, Jackie. How are you?
I'm excellent. I'm excited. It's been the first time in a long time I've got really excited about nerdy techie stuff. So I'm looking forward to the conversation today.
Me too. How are you freezing? Are
I
you
am
keeping
freezing. It's
warm?
literally -3 degrees Fahrenheit here. Even my car complained when I turned it on this morning. So it's definitely cold. Colder
That
than
is that's incredibly cold. Well, I think the good news is the agents don't get cold. They work in any weather, and so that's a good thing.
they do, they do. In fact, I had an agent running over the evening. And it was kind of funny because I was like, I wonder if I should close my laptop or not. So I started this agent and I didn't time out, but I ran out of I hit a rate limit. And so I went over and it was like 4 in the morning because it like lit up. And restarted and my husband's like, what's going on? And he thought I woke up because I was cold. And I was like, no, I'm restarting my agent. He's like, what?
My overnight shifts is down.
Yeah, exactly. Then I was like, how do I put this in my task list? I worked overnight. I want credit for the Claude's overnight work.
I think that's going to be like a real thing in the future. Is we have so much like token capacity or like work capacity that we're just not deploying. And in the very near future, if you're not running something overnight, like you missed, like it's like we talk about this a lot about it being a production system and it's like a factory. It's like if you have enough demand, the factory runs three shifts. It runs the 24 hours a day. Like that's how really well run factories run. That's how really good information factories, or in our language, humans plus agents factories are going to run because you can set them up well enough to go run for 8 hours overnight and wake up to actual work being done. And yeah, the fact that we just got access to these tools with last week, I can't even remember, and I used it for a day or two, and I said, Jackie, you need to do it. And since then, you've been unlocking so many amazing things that are producing amazing value for us already. It's like weird to talk about it in those terms because it's Tuesday.
Yeah.
And I did a workshop on it on Saturday. Actually, it was like yesterday that you watched that workshop, and then you're like, it feels like we've compressed like a year in like a couple of days. It's
Yeah. It's
baffling
crazy.
to me.
You know what actually makes me think about and the audience won't know about all of this, but we you had always talked about this idea of thinking lenses, which are ways that you can look through um frameworks, like a lattice work of frameworks to sort of think through any problem. And I'm gonna go with maybe 6 months ago, one of those thinking lenses was time, right? Like how long does it take to do a thing? And I remember when we first went through it, it was like, things that you can do in a second, things you can do in a minute, things you can do in an hour, things you can do in a day, etc. And then it was like the humans can do that versus, and then agents could do that. And it was literally last night where I thought of, I used to get excited when the ChatGPT or Claude or something would run for like 5 minutes. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like it did 5 minutes of work without me having to intervene. This is so exciting. Literally, this thing kicked off for me. I kicked it off midday and it ran until I literally just ran out of rate. So it ran for like 6 hours. And I was like thinking like we leapfrogged in just a really short amount of time when Claude released the co-work and the ability to kind of have this development environment and the MCP connection to Chrome so easily. From me being excited about 5 minutes of work being done without me to like a full day of work being done without my intervention and invaluable real work. And I thought, oh, that's one more of those times where you were prophesizing, right, of where we were going to get, but we weren't there yet. And now we're there. Like a day's worth of work in one shot. It's crazy.
Well, it's yeah, I would love to dive into that one because the thinking lens, and I'm going to create like a visual that maybe we'll have next week and we can walk through it. Like it's a way to think about how things are changing. And that particular lens has like minutes, seconds, minutes, hours, days, weeks, months. It's like so over time, the amount of time required to do a task goes down and down and down. It's like orders of magnitude faster. Then on the other side is the amount of time that the AI can work goes up. And like so you just described like a real practical example. But one of the things that's not clear, and maybe not even to me yet, is the way most people might take the fact that you got a AI to work for 6 hours was you had like one additional coworker doing something for 6 hours. But that's like dog years. Like the amount of work that actually got done in 6 hours is probably like orders of magnitude between 10 and 100 times the amount that one human for 6 hours could have done. So like you got done either 60 hours or 600 hours worth of work out of that one run. And so I just think that in most, like including myself, most people have a hard time with exponential math. It's like you did not unlock an extra coworker. You unlocked 10 to 100 extra coworkers. And if you could stack those wins over and over and over again, that's where the the wins will come from. And just to play the idea tennis that we play on this show, like that in turn unlocks like, well, what like the exercise that you did, we probably never would have done in a world where that would have taken 60. It wasn't worth 60 hours of human hours to do. And so I think there's this new world where we unlock new valuable things to do that will ultimately, release the fear of a lot of people that you're getting automated out of your job. It's like there's going to be more and more new valuable things to do that require humans to operate the machine to do the work and so on. So it is I've never, like you said, I've never been this excited about technology. We've been talking about it, anticipating it for 2.5 years. And I feel like literally since early last or like mid last week, it's here.
Yeah, it's crazy. And even with that being said, like the one product, there's two things I was working on yesterday. I did one in Chat GPT, I did one in Claude, and then I was doing other work, right? So there's three of me working yesterday. But one of the things that I remember as an old coder, I always joke about is we actually used to buy, it was called Mercury. We bought this automated testing software and we had to like learn how to use this automated testing software, which took a long time. It was really complicated. And then we like hired automating testing engineers that could then code this automation testing software to be able to do create the test to automated test, right? And yesterday I said, here's my golden example, like something we'll talk about a little later. Here's the thing I built. It works exactly the way I want it to work. Create automated test script, right? Create it. And then I was like, ooh, I wonder. I was like, could you run this? And it was like, well, actually, if you connect to the Claude Chrome extension that connects to the MCP server, yes, I can. I was like, you can? This is fabulous. I'm like, yes, do all those things. It literally created and ran an automated testing, found an issue, suggested how I could fix the issue. I fixed it and it reran it and did it all again. And literally the only interaction I had was when it said, hey, this is where you failed. And it was because I forgot to tell it I needed to log in, right? Which is like my issue, not its issue. That would have taken weeks with a really complicated software and a whole lot of training to a human. And the training I did was like, here are two documents that represent things that I want it to look like, right? Here's my context that I want you to do. And and it was because I asked the question, like, well, can you run this for me? And it said, I was like, oh, this is super exciting, right? So again, it's not that we wouldn't have done it. We just didn't have enough people, and we didn't have enough expertise in the specialty software, and we didn't have enough, understanding of all the configurations. Yesterday I did it, and then did it again, and then produced this really cool repeatable output. So yeah, we've always wanted to do it. We always wanted to do it. There just wasn't enough resources in a whole bunch of different ways. And now there are, which is for me, I think is super exciting to be able to do.
Yeah, it's to lean into that idea of like people worrying about their jobs and you like would I ever fire you for like figuring these things out? Like I don't the type of people you want in the organization are people who are doing those things. The only constraint would be is there enough valuable things to do? If you're working in a company and there's only so many valuable things to do, and now the AI can do 95% of them, that's a problem. But no organization on the planet is like, yeah, we're happy with exactly where we are. Like they want more valuable things to do. So you can use the AI to figure out what are the other valuable things that I can do. And then you can put it in that production system like you were talking about that we'll get into. That's where you add value in an organization because your ability to do valuable things, including the things that were not possible before, is how you will add value to the company. And those people never get fired. Like you're never firing that person. The only downside for that for the company will be like that person might be like exponentially more valuable now and might decide to leave the company, which is a risk like I'm willing to take. Like if you get so valuable that you're like I'm out of here, fine. But we're building a production system that such that the company will have learned everything that you know before you go, and so everybody can win in that scenario. So I'm sure we'll have lots of opportunity to talk about like the job impacts and like how companies should think about this new capacity. But the work that you did literally yesterday is a glimpse for how the future looks like in almost every company on the planet.
I think if I were to be super crazy optimistic, which isn't actually usually my personality trait, one of the cool things that I'm seeing is in the like, I work with a lot of founders as well, like yourself. You guys never run out of ideas, right? Like I say I joke to people all the time. I'm like, yeah, Steve got bored on a Tuesday night and now we have a new product this morning, right? But literally now we can have the new product this morning. Like that's why I think that combo is good, right? You have to have a thinker and someone that gets really excited and has all these ideas, and then someone who figures out how to do automated testing so we can do more and more and more of the things that your founder thinks of. Uh, I think now, with interestingly, part of the bottleneck is going to be the creativity of the product team or the founder, and do they have enough ideas? Do they have enough new things that they're thinking of? And even the idea of what is a founder, what is a product person. If you weren't in the weeds with this stuff, you wouldn't have had some of these ideas. Like they just wouldn't have been able to exist. So even like how roles are defined and what that looks like, I think is also starting to morph quite a bit as we see some of these unlocks that are happening with the tool sets.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun and interesting year as we sit here on January the 20th, figuring out what's gonna like if the last few days felt like a year, like what is a year going to feel like? It's wild to think about. So why don't we talk a little bit about the how we're thinking about agents in language that I think regular people can understand because I wanted to give a little bit of background on like some of the things that I've done in my life and um it'll tie into this, I promise. Well, this will be like a 60-second detour. So, um, first thing I did was I was a lawyer for exactly 1 week. It's always part of the joke and how I introduce myself. And what I noticed in the legal industry is that they use a lot of really fancy words for very straightforward concepts. And not because they're bad people, and maybe some of them like want to trick people to like, well, you can't. This is tort law, and you can't. You have no idea what you're talking about because we're using words you're not familiar with. Um, so I got out of that, and then I got into the marketing agency space, and not in the marketing agency space like most people think of today, which is like internet scamming kind of stuff. But like we were doing real marketing work for real clients. But even in that industry, like everybody used all of this language that nobody understood. So you could trick clients into paying you more money. It's like we have this super duper, we're using terms like, I don't even remember the terms. They're terms for things that are obvious if you just said them in plain English. So similarly, when we're talking about agents, if you paid attention to how software engineers are talking about it, which is mostly where these things start, they use a lot of very complicated like language that I don't understand. And what I'm hoping that you and I will do when we go through this is try to explain it in plain English words that everybody can understand. And because I think there is a lot of fear around using the technology. And if you just understand a few simple things, you'll be able to unlock the true power of it. So that's my like, maybe if you catch me using words that are like technology words, and I'll do the same. We can, because I think that's one of the things we want to do is help demystify this stuff for everybody.
I think that's fair. And so I think what you're going to get into next is um, kind of a framework or that we use. Um, and without that framework, I'd actually have to say I wouldn't have unlocked the testing thing yesterday. And you often talk about, was it Charlie Munger? Is that how you say his name? This
Yep.
like idea of a lattice of frameworks inside your head. And like, so if you learn random stuff, you're not going to be, it's not going to be repeatable. And so in this case, I was going through this framework that you're going to share in my head. And I was like, oh, wait, I haven't done anything around quality control. I haven't done any testing. And then I did, right? Because it was a framework I could easily look back and think about. So I think sharing what we're now seeing as the way to create an agent-like process or an agent would be really helpful for everyone and in generic terms, I think too.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll try to do this as best I can in generic terms. But I think the framework, like the mental model I have for this is that we're building a factory. And imagine you get a factory that ships, whatever, and an energy drink comes out the other end of your factory. How do you make that energy drink? How do you make the can, the leaves, the factory? And we'll use like manufacturing language to kind of, I feel like there's a bridge between, there's a technology part of it with software engineers using very complicated language. Manufacturing is sort of, it's a process flow and it's easier to explain to people than software. It's like the machine spits out this can and fills it with energy drink and we ship it. Like that's easier to understand than software. And then we'll translate it into like knowledge work kind of language. So when you think about an agent, it's essentially it's a worker on the agent is a worker on a machine, and it needs really clear instructions on how to do the work. And imagine every single time you ask the agent to do something, it's like you just hired that person 10 minutes ago. They know nothing about your business. They know nothing about this task. You got to train them. Here's how you run this machine. Here are the steps that you take. Here's what good looks like. When the can comes on the other end, you got to look at it and say, here's what it looks like because we designed it that way. And then you got to make sure that if there's a defect, you send it back and it gets rebuilt, or in a case, the can goes in the garbage and you build a new one. So that's um, knowledge work is just like that, but it gets passed around inside your company as the output instead of cans is deliverables. It's a marketing strategy. It's an email to a client. It's a whatever. So that's the mental model to have. You've got deliverables running through this factory type of idea. So once you have that mental model in your head, you and I were talking about this just before we got on, because most other people have not tried to break it down into a simple explanation like this. So you and I are figuring this out in real time as we're doing it. So one of things that we figured out is that there's inputs to this process and there's outputs to this process. The inputs you control, the agent takes those inputs and makes outputs. And the three inputs are a golden example. So a golden example in a knowledge worker environment would be, here's the finished product. Here's what a really good website should look like. Here's what a really good proposal in our company looks like. Here's what a good presentation looks like all, list all the deliverables that you make. But you have to give the AI a good example of what good is. Here it is. So that's document. Input number one is a golden example. Input number two is, but that's just like the design of it. And the agent needs the raw materials to make it. And the raw materials is context from your organization. And so there's a document that you feed it. That's what we would call a context compiler, which I think is both a technical term. And for me, like as a non-technical person, like that makes sense. I'm going to go compile some context. I think it works for plain language. And so that is, and I don't think we want to get into the details on it today, but there's a few different kinds of context that you want the AI to go get. Yeah, actually, let me walk through it. You and I can dig in where it makes sense. We'll stress test to see if this is understandable. So the first pieces of context that the agent would go and look for would be what already exists in the documentation in the organization. So things that would be like on your Google Drive, things that are in your Dropbox account. Like, can the agent just go and find what it needs inside of the documentation that you've already created? Because that would save a lot of time. Because you probably had the experience of working with AI and you continuously have to tell it the same thing over and over and over again. That's waste time and it's frustrating. But it's not today, that's a fixable problem. Like maybe 2 months ago, that was a hard problem to solve. The second piece of context would be the systems of record, connections to the systems of record in your organization, which probably makes a lot of privacy people really freak out. But one of the things you could do, as soon as you prove that it was safe to do and compliant with whatever compliance laws you need to be in compliance with, you could give it access to that data and it can go find the data that it needs for like a marketing presentation or whatever. And then the last step would be, okay, if the agent can't find in your knowledge documents, if it can't find it in your systems of record, it has to ask you for that context because it can't do the job without the right context. And so that's the last step. It would ask the agent, will say, hey, like if it's the guy working on the can line, I don't know where to go find this material. Like you could help me find the materials I need to do this step. And literally have to go ask your boss, like, boss, sorry to say, but I don't know where that information is. Or can you help me find it? So you provide the information, which is basically a training opportunity for the agent. We're training it in the moment. So the agent is asking you, train me please to get this job done. The last input document would be a quality control check, which you give to the guy on the first day. When the can comes off the line, you look at it and make sure it matches what we're expecting. So the agent actually runs through all those things on its own. The only input will be if you didn't give it enough context, it's going to ask you for some context. And then there's 3 output documents. And then the output document, when it's going through its process, it'll run through the QC document, quality control document. And if anything is missing, it'll go do another can. It'll make another can. Like, did this can pass? And it keeps making cans until the can is passed. The last thing it'll do is it'll go, okay, fine, here's the can. I made you a can. Here is the quality control report. So I had to run this 7 times. Here are the things that went wrong. I think maybe here are some opportunities that we can change our process. And then the last thing, if this was a really good worker, what we do is like, hey, here's some ways in which we can improve the system. I think we should put these raw materials over here. There's like a context idea. Create a context card in your knowledge base so that next time you're running this, the AI knows exactly where to go to get it. That'll save you time the next time. And then the second thing it'll do is here are some of the processes that we think we can improve the next time. So what you'll get, the more and more you run these agents, is the agent actually helping you become more efficient, and also improve the system as a whole. So that's kind of the way it's a longer version of what you and I were talking about before we got on. But does that work as like a metaphor and like a way to explain how this works in a easy to understand way? Did that
Yeah,
make
I think
sense to
so. Makes sense to me because like honestly, it was like two frameworks that I've used in my past life kind of come together here. And one of those is the software development lifecycle, right? Like or product development lifecycle, depending on your viewpoint. So you build a thing, what's the definition of done, right? Like what am I building? Why am I building it? Did I build it right? Do it until it's correct. And the other is process development, which I've used SIPOC, or I was like green belt, Six Sigma green belt for a while. So you have inputs and you have outputs, right? What is the inputs? What are the outputs? What are you supplying? And so it actually fits with both of those frameworks, my framework of reference from before now, but applying it to sort of the now, right? With the speed and the ability and the agents and all of the things. And frankly, it can do a lot of things that I just gave up doing before because there wasn't time. So I do think that it makes sense. And I'm using it. So I would say the one opportunity I have is the opportunity to add the system improvement report. That does the only part that I'm not fully doing in a couple of the recent things that I've just built. And of course we would do that, right? And one of the things that I recommend is I've been keeping like a source of truth for all updates or all new things. So there's only one list that I go to when I'm being asked for a new thing or get an improvement request from the LLM or my agents or whatever I'm building. So that way it doesn't get lost. Because now the amount of opportunities to improve are also, you know, exploded like a hockey stick. And again, the idea of not having enough work, I someday maybe I'll get there, Steve, but it doesn't feel like I'm there now. It just keeps adding to my list of more things to get done. But adding as a part of the process, I think would be like the next step for maturing what I'm already doing right now.
so what was that process framework that you're
It's SIPOC, it's SIPOC.
SIPOC? Yeah. Which I'm not familiar with. So one of the sidebar, I've read thousands of business books, which means that I've been exposed to a lot of frameworks. Not that one, because maybe process improvement was really boring and I didn't want to read about it. It's very exciting to me now because it like unlocks so much value in the business. Um, but one of the things that pops up for me as you were talking about it is because you have like, oh, I'm gonna attach these ideas to some framework that I know, right? And so it helps you understand, okay, I have a lens to see this through. So one of the things that may be useful in the future that we can do is ask people like what other like are the which of these frameworks are you familiar with? Let us explain agents to you through that lens because that will like immediately make things click for people rather than trying to teach them the technical language. Like first we got to get you to understand like what's in plain English, what's actually happening. And the easiest way is to translate software engineering to SIPOC process engineering because it is just inputs and outputs. And my point for reading like those thousands of books is like it's all the same stuff. Like everything is the same. Every functional area of a business has reinvented all of the same stuff and made their own names for it, and thus makes it confusing for people. But it's all inputs and outputs. It's all let's make the inputs better through the outputs so that the next time we run it, the output is better. It's like that's literally what it is everywhere. And so maybe that's an opportunity for us to be able to communicate these ideas better to folks. I'm sure there's an agent card I'll put on your production schedule that will have you make something that will help with that.
Yeah, that sounds fair. And I think that makes sense too, though. Like I said, when I was going through and we were kind of talking through it, um, I can just do it now because I linked it to models that are already hanging off inside of my head. And the other thought that I thought was really interesting, so SIPOC is part of Lean Six Sigma sort of process mapping and how you create a process. And one of the things you do when you train for Six Sigma is you do a green belt training project, and it's like a whole quarter. We used a whole quarter to create one process doc, and I it was like sub-second created last night for the project that I was working on. So I think it's exciting to sort of see that we're still doing the things we were doing before. We just actually have the ability to do them. Like they're great processes, right? Like you talked yesterday, like the ocean strategy is great, right? They're all these business book processes are great, but they're not like hanging in our head. They're not something we can just grab and do at the deep level of detail. And now we have some opportunities where we can do that, which I think is exciting in terms of, what does that look like in business and even better outputs. I mean, right now, I don't know, there's a lot of AI slop out there, just like garbage in, garbage out, no context, just like, oh, look, I made this super fast. And um, these types of processes help us get meaningful, valuable work out of what we're doing and hopefully help reduce some of the slop that's kind of getting created now.
Yeah, and I to add on to that, I think what AI slop is created by people who don't know what good looks like for the most part, right? So there's some people who know what good looks like, and they're just super lazy, and they'll like blast out a thousand messages and hope for the best, and who cares what it looks like. Even if they knew that this sucks, they're going to do it. But I think for the most part, like AI slop comes from people who don't know what good looks like. I don't know the right inputs and outputs, and that is a because this is going all the way back to the beginning and how we positioned what we were doing in the first place was the people who have the biggest opportunity for success are the people with the most experience. And this is one of my predictions that I'm 99% confident will come true. Like people like you who have a lot of experience, super smart, know what good looks like and know what to ask for will be the ones to succeed because it's no longer an execution problem or it's no longer a skill, technology, technical skill problem. You can just ask for it. Do this, do that. And if the outputs are, you already know that doing that testing suite is going to be very valuable. You can just ask for it and it's done. And so your compounding advantage comes from knowing what to ask for, not necessarily knowing or managing how it's done. You manage the input and the output, and whatever happens in between, who cares? Like that's really the idea. So I think that is going to become very clear as we progress, and hopefully we do a good job of explaining this to people so it unlocks that ability for a lot of mid-career people who are usually the most concerned because they hear about layoffs and they have mortgages to pay and they have kids to support, and so it is a scary time. But I think if the mind shift is you can fight it, and there if you fight it you're like pardon the language, you're totally screwed. Like that should be clear now over the next last week that if you don't start using this, like there's no one that will compete with you and me in like the specifics of what we are doing right now. You couldn't compete with us because we know what to ask for. Um,
I think if I were to sum that up, something that I find really interesting, because I've worked at really large companies like Honeywell, and I've worked at startup companies as well, and I had my own company. And value was always seen as like how much of a and how deep of a subject matter expert can you be in a very specific thing. So for example, I used to help write software for cardiac MRI visualization software. It was a very, very specific thing with very specific algorithm creation. However, I don't need that level of specificity anymore. I am actually valuable because I'm a generalist. I've worked in product, I've worked in development, I've run a company, I've worked in sales support, all of these things. And the I think it's like the rise of the generalist was always like marginalized in the past, or people who have like a large general body of knowledge, or maybe read a bunch of book summaries or read a bunch of books. They now have an advantage that previously there was sort of like, oh, well, you just know surface level stuff. Well, yeah, but I know a whole lot about everything, but I was never super crazy deep other than some software stuff and product pieces. And I'm excited to see like that kind of the rise up again of the generalist, because it's more fun to do. For me, it's more fun to do a bunch of different things versus like only creating an algorithm all day, every day, nonstop. Like that's not fun.
There are so many rabbit holes we could go down. So I'm gonna go down this one, and then
So we should wrap
I know
up.
you have a time constraint, so you tell me when
Yeah.
we're done.
Okay.
The I, so there's one thing I do want to say about the rise of like the generalist. So usually when people are when use that term, they mean like, oh, I've done a bunch of stuff, and I've not like I don't know in-depth technical things or like so it's like somebody who's done a bunch of wide and varied things, and it's easy to conclude that that would still be valuable. But I think there is a distinction to be made because that was always like never not that valuable. And I still think it's not that valuable in the way that most people think about it. I know this is not the way you think about it, but there is a technical like the generalist now turns into a technical skill. A technical skill is understanding the entire vocabulary, not just what you've experienced. Like that's not the thing. The thing is to know all of it and to know all the things you can ask for in these agent environments, which is not technical stuff. It's like what is valuable to ask for. So it is, I think, different, and I think maybe we need a different word for it because it's not just your experience is valuable. It's like a wide. There's a term that I have not been exposed to until I started trying to figure out all these things, and that's MECE, mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. And I think about that all the time now because we're thinking in frameworks and like comprehensive things. There is a vocabulary, there is a mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive framework or vocabulary that you will need to have in order to succeed. It's completely both general and specific at the same time. And so I think it's different. And I
It's
urge people who are generalists not to think that your experience is going to carry you throughout this because it won't.
That's fair. I learned something 47 things yesterday. I think I learned 47 things today. So it's not like sitting back, but definitely I think that's fair. Well, I appreciate that you took the time to kind of walk through the framework for how we kind of look at agents and what that looks like. And so I think it'd be a good spot for us to wrap up for today, and look forward to meeting with you again next week and sharing with our audience all the other things that we're putting together. In the meantime, if they want to learn more about what we're doing, they can go to roiassociation.ai and learn about how we're helping others get return on their investment with their AI implementations. Any last words you'd like to share, Steve?
Stay warm.
All right. Thank you so much. I'll see you later. Have a good day. Bye.
See you too.